every single one of the books that we're looking at in this video has seen a value decline. And on average, these books have come down by 46%. Now, here's the thing. These are some awesome comics. And so the question is now the time to snag these comics? Stay tuned. All right, so let's go ahead and look at a couple of examples. And the first book that we're going to look at has the largest decline out of all the books that we are going to look at in this video. And I am talking about The Tomb of Dracula, issue number 10. This book has seen a 46% decline in value at one of its grades. And so I want to go ahead and look at this one. This is, of course, a key comic because it is the first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer. This book you would think would potentially be holding its value in anticipation of Blade making an appearance in the MCU, yet we are seeing declines with this book. And the book in question that I'm talking about that has seen this 46% decline is the 9.4. And surprisingly, there are a healthy number of copies of this book at this grade, 222 specifically on the CGC census. There have been 124 sales of this book. At present, it has an FMV of $3,700, and you can see that there have been some sales within the last 30 days. So that's part of the reason why I started with the 9.4. But let's go ahead and click on this thing and take a look at it. And I want to make this a little bit larger so that you all can see this very easily. But you see a nice little run up and definitely a decline. Most recently, this book sold for about $38.70 in November. But if you back up to October, you see that there hasn't been that much of a fall off as of late. The book sold in October for $39.38 and again in November for $38.70. That's about a $68 difference, $68 decline between the two. The real story for this book is if you back up, if you back all the way up to April of 2022, this book sold for $7,200 at a 9.4. And that is where you see the massive fall off in value as you go from $7,200 in April to $3,800 in November of this year. That's where you see roughly a $3,330 decline, or as I mentioned, a 46% fall off in value. And again, this is a book that people want. This book, people like this book. This is a good comic, and as I mentioned, the Blade movie eventually is going to be filmed, and it will eventually come out, and potentially we will see this trend reverse itself. But you can see, just backing up 1 year ago, according to Go Collect, this book was selling for $51.21. 90-day average dropped to $38.93. The 30-day is sitting at $38.70. Again, just a massive fall off for what is a really awesome book. And it's part of the reason why I do this series called Snag These Books Now, because potentially someone out there that is a Blade fan, that is maybe, or an investor that is looking at these numbers is like, hey, now is the time to buy the dip, or you could just be enjoying the content. You decide. The next book that I wanted to look at was the 8.5. There are 414 copies of this book on the census. It has an FMV, according to Go Collect, of $1,800. You can see that there is some 30-day data, so it gives us some good stuff to look at here. And again, you see a dramatic fall off in the value of this book. The most recent price for this book was $17.92, and if you back up to October, the book sold for $38.24. So, but from October to November, you are looking at a $1,000 decline, specifically $1,032 decline, or about a 37% fall off in value. And you can see here in July of 2022, this book sold for roughly $4,000, which is that is a nice chunk of money for an 8.5. There are a lot of people that definitely lost some money on this book, but potentially now is the time to actually snag this book. And so to that point, I want to take a look here at the other grades for this book. You can see the 7.5, there is definitely a decline in value. Most recent price $1,600. The 7.0, most recent price $1,370. Not no sales for the 6.5, 6.0, 5.5, but the 5.0 is sitting at $821. A year ago, that book was $1,100. And again, as you go down the list, you are seeing that the value of this book is absolutely declining. Again, nothing wrong with the book, nothing wrong with the character. And so this could represent a great buying opportunity, no doubt about it. So the next book that I want to look at is another book that has been a high flyer. There is no doubt about that. This book has been a high flyer, but like so many other books, regardless of age, we are seeing declines in value. But for the moment, we are going to focus our attention on Ultimate Fallout issue number 4, the first appearance of Miles Morales. And I want to look at the 9.8 because, again, I believe that that is the sweet spot for a lot of these modern comics. There are 3,600 copies of this book on the CGC census, a total of almost 16,000 copies on the census. But again, 3,600 of them have a 9.8 blue label. And so we can see that there is some 30-day data for this book. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. And I want to make this a little bit larger again so you all can see it very easily. You see a little bit of a hockey stick. You see a little bit of a hockey stick with this book. The most recent price for this book in December, $21.61. $21.61 was the most recent sale as of December. You back up to November, the book had hit a recent low of $18.89. That is a $272 increase from November to December of this year. A little bit of a hockey stick there. The real story, I do believe, isn't what happened in just these last 30 days or so. But if you back up, if you go all the way back to the beginning of the year, February of this year, this book sold at a 9.8 for $35.28. $35.28. And again, if you fast forward even to the hockey stick at $21.61, that represents a $1,300 decline, specifically $13.67, or a 39% decline in value from the beginning of the year to basically the end of the year. And I will tell you, I personally believe in Miles Morales. I think this is a great character. Again, like with the Tomb of Dracula, there is nothing wrong with this book. There is nothing wrong with the character. Across the board, we are seeing values of comics come down, and potentially that is a very good thing for a lot of people. But I want to back up. I want to back up and take a look at something else really quickly here with this book. Again, I personally believe that the sweet spot for this book is a 9.8. I don't own a 9.8, but I think I own a 9.6, and I'm very happy with that one. But there are 4,000 copies of this book on the CGC census at a 9.6. And I want to drill in to see what is happening with this book, specifically at the 9.6. And as you can very easily see, just like with the 9.8, the value of this book is coming down. The most recent price for this book, $620. And that is off of a high in March of $14.02. So even at a 9.6, the value of this book is coming down. And if we back up and if we take a look at what's happening at the 9.4, at the 9.2, at the 9.0, and so on, you can see that the value of this book is dropping across the board. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to show this is because there are people out there that are paying good money for facsimile versions of this book. They are paying 100, 150 are some of the numbers that I've seen. Why pay for the facsimile when you could potentially get the real deal for a few $100s more? And that is part of what sparked me to look at Ultimate Fallout. Is I had somebody reach out to me to say, hey, Reggie, the value of the facsimile, or sorry, the value of the second prints is coming down for Ultimate Fallout. So I went to go look at them, and my thought was, yeah, they're coming down, but what's happening to the real thing? And as we just saw, the value of the real thing is coming down. So why get a facsimile? Why get a second print? Why get a third print? Why get any of that when you could potentially save up a couple of extra bucks and get the real thing? Because the value of the first appearance of Miles Morales at a 9.8, 9.6, and so on is coming down. And so again, I wanted to flag that for people as well, because it's potentially a good opportunity to get in on this book. So speaking of good opportunities, the last book that we're going to look at is a book that surprisingly has its value coming down as well. It seems like even being featured in a movie isn't sufficient enough to sustain the value of comics the way that we have seen in the past. We have seen values of comics take off dramatically and to some degree or another be sustained. I mean, yes, there is a fall off after the movie comes out, but generally speaking, these books are doing well when a character is appearing in a movie. That does not seem to be holding true right now. And so I'm specifically speaking about Submariner. Submariner issue number 1. I think this is the first series. Solo series for Submariner. I have a couple of copies of this book. I want to start off with the 9.6. And part of the reason for that is I was a little surprised that there were 161 graded copies of this book at a 9.6. I've only seen what I think are like dingy copies. This book never looks really vibrant to me, to be honest with you, whenever I've seen it, but maybe at a 9.8, 9.6. So 161 copies of the 9.6 on the CGC census, has an FMV of $3,000 according to Go Collect. You can see that there is some sales data in the most recent. So let's go ahead and click on that and take a look at this book and see what we see. And again, I'm going to make this a little bit larger so that folks can actually see it easily. But what we see here is that in November, this book sold for $29.52. And I want to back up. I want to back up to this peak right here. Not that any of us are going out buying 9.6 as a Submariner, but I wanted to back up to this peak, 61.11. $6,111 is what this book basically sold for in December, about a year ago. Fast forward to November, $29.52. That is a 52% decline in value. 52% decline in value, or $3,159 between the two. So I just thought that was interesting. Again, the 9.6 jumped out at me. I wanted to go ahead and take a look at it, and we see a massive fall off in value with that one. But I want to back up just a little bit here and look at, and I guess technically Tomb of Dracula wasn't the smallest, wasn't the largest, it was Submariner. But let's go ahead and look at the 9.2. I want to look at the 9.2 because the value of that is a little bit lower. There are 241 copies on the census. So let's go ahead and look at this one and see what's happening. And let's make this a little bit larger. And again, you see a little bit of a hockey stick. You see a little bit of a hockey stick at the very end with this book. But in November, the book sold for $1,502, $1,502. And if we back up, let's go back to September. I think that was the data point that I referenced for some reason, $2,650. In September, the book sold for $2,650, and in November, $1,502. That is a difference of $1,148, or 48%. I'm sorry, 43%. My apologies on that. Again, the value of these books are coming down. Nothing wrong with Submariner. Nothing wrong with Submariner or Submariner issue number 1 from 1968. But again, the value of this book has definitely come down. And if we back up and take a glance at what is going on across the various grades that are out here, you see declines at the 8.5, at the 8.0, at the 7.5, and so on. As we work our way down the list, the values of this book are absolutely coming down, which means that, again, even if you're not going after the 9.6 or the 9.2, if Submariner is a character that you believe in, that you really enjoy, maybe you've always wanted this book, potentially now could be the time to snag this book. With that said, we're going to wrap this video up. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch. If there is a book that I haven't showcased in this series that you want me to take a look at, I want to encourage you to leave those comments down below. If there's something that you watched in this video that surprised you, I encourage you to leave those thoughts down below. And if you haven't, for whatever reason, subscribe to the channel, I want to personally invite you right now to go ahead and tap the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content. With that said, if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
Dirty rapper rolling